Deaf millionaire's son cried for 3 hours on the plane, but a little girl's sign language transformed his world. Ethan sat in his window seat, the din of laughter and chatter around him swirling into a deafening roar. He felt the weight of his family's legacy pressing down hard on his chest, each breath a reminder of the expectations he was born into but never felt he could live up to. The plane's engines roared to life, and as they taxied down the runway, his vision blurred with unshed tears. In a world filled with the sounds of excitement, he was an island of silence, adrift and alone. Ethan had always felt like an outsider. Born into wealth as the son of a successful deaf entrepreneur, he had experienced first-class privileges while grappling with crippling self-doubt. His father's name was spoken with reverence, a titan of the tech industry who had built an empire, one that Ethan was supposed to inherit and expand. Yet here he was, a graduate student still trying to figure out what he wanted, every tear that streamed down his face a testament to his internal turmoil. Am I just the rich kid? Nothing more than a shadow of my father's brilliance. Even as he felt the anticipation of the family reunion, a gathering of brilliant minds and formidable personalities, he could see it clearly, the expectation to succeed effortlessly. What does success mean for me? His mind raced, spiraling into a framework of anxiety as they ascended to the clouds. He wiped his tears with his sleeve, wishing for the emotional release they offered, yet burdened by the feeling that no one truly cared to see him not as Ethan, but merely as a name attached to a legacy. As he fought against despair, a small tap at the divider startled him. Through the plastic partition, a vivacious 10-year-old girl with bright eyes and wild curls caught his gaze. Mia, her name card read, and she was clearly unfazed by the tumult of emotions that surrounded her. She signed something enthusiastically, her tiny fingers dancing in ways that were both foreign and soothing. "Are you okay?" bubbled her curiosity, cutting through his solitude like a lifeline. For a moment, Ethan hesitated, the insistent noise of the plane threatening to drown out her genuine inquiry. But something about her innocence and warmth beckoned him to reply. Words felt inadequate, but signing felt like a release. Ethan shared his tangled feelings, a cacophony of self-doubt and longing that bubbled beneath the surface, each gesture a representation of fears he had buried deep. This was a language his family had spoken since birth, but somehow, it had become foreign to him over the years. As he shared, he discovered how freeing it felt to drop the mask he constantly wore. But every revelation came with its own set of questions. What was he even saying? To this girl, from a world starkly different from his own. A single-parent household versus the wealth and privilege he took for granted. It felt like a chasm that stretched wider with each flicker of her hands. He grappled with feelings of guilt, and somehow, the child's laughter transformed his confusion into a stir of something unexpected, inspiration. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Mia's dreams of becoming an artist, her struggle with balancing family and art, left Ethan questioning everything he thought he knew about success. Was their bond a fluke or a sign of something deeper within himself? As they conversed, he felt layers of his own identity peel away, revealing fragmented pieces of dreams long buried under expectations. But just as he began to see the glimmers of possibility, the captain's voice crackled through the intercom, announcing their descent into St. Louis. The laughter that surrounded him closed in like a tightening vice, a visceral reminder of the family waiting for him. He felt torn between the allure of embracing the part of himself he had hidden and the need for approval from his father's shadow. Ethan looked at Mia, holding onto her small hand desperately, as if the comfort of that touch could ward off the inevitable. The plane thrummed with tension as he prepared to confront the towering expectations of his family, but now it was intertwined with a flicker of determination to stand up for his own. Would he choose the gilded cage, or dare to be free? Ethan's heart raced as the plane touched down, the jolt of landing echoing the uncertainty roiling within him. He glanced at Mia, her wide smile a stark contrast to his dread. She seemed to embody possibility, a light in the dim recesses that had long smothered his hope. Amid the laughter of families reuniting around him, he felt the distance grow sharper between his experiences and theirs. What did it mean to be among people who appeared whole, fulfilled? As the passengers disembarked, Ethan stood frozen for an instant. Mia's hand slipped from his grasp, and he suddenly felt the weight of gravity pulling him back toward suffocating expectations. He forced himself to move, following the throng out of the aircraft, the oppressive air thick with unspoken judgments. Stepping into the terminal, he was met by the sight of his family, all familiar faces brimming with pride, yet he felt like an intruder walking into a world where he no longer belonged. His father, a dignified figure in a crisp suit, spotted him first and strode over with arms open wide. The embrace was warm yet suffocating, filled with the unspoken message of expectations and dreams that had been transferred endlessly from father to son. "Ethan! My boy!" His father exclaimed, the sound of his voice resonating in stark contrast to the silence that defined Ethan's own existence. Ethan managed a weak smile but couldn't shake the sense that he was being scrutinized. He summoned the courage to meet his father's gaze, searching for any hint of acceptance. "How's school?" his father asked, his face a mask of concern interwoven with ambition. "It's good. I'm learning a lot," Ethan replied, the honest response tinged with an undercurrent of hesitation. Nothing felt good about being tethered to uncertainty. Just then, his mother, a woman known for her sharp intellect and unwavering support, joined them. Her eyes sparkled with pride as she looked at Ethan, but again he sensed she was evaluating his fit within the family narrative. "We're so proud of you, Ethan," she reaffirmed, her voice infused with layers of hope and anxiety. Amidst the affectionate banter, his mind wandered back to Mia. Their conversation had unveiled layers of his identity he hadn't dared to explore: art, creativity, and freedom. This was what he wanted, wasn't it? The pull of familial duty clashed violently with the vision of becoming his own person. He had a decision to make, one that had weight far beyond the sound of his father's accolades. As he navigated the ensuing family gathering, a whirlwind of engaging conversations mingled with superficial pleasantries, Ethan realized he felt more of a spectator than a participant. Each word spoken stoked the flames of his internal struggle. He needed clarity, direction, a plan to reclaim a sense of purpose. His thoughts flicked to the starkness of Mia's dreams and the boldness she had shown as she unraveled her own narrative. "You have to find your own path," her words echoed in his brain like a chant, their vibrancy illuminating the cobwebs of doubt he had allowed to form over the years. He knew he couldn't simply live under the shadow of his father's legacy, it was time to confront it. Just then, a wave of steadiness surged through him, a resolve he hadn't felt before. He could no longer be encapsulated by fear or expectation. He had to let his own voice echo through the corridors of this legacy. "What if he began, testing the conviction forming within him, went back to art? What if I embraced that side of me?" The question hung heavy, an invitation for a change. Would his family understand? Would they accept this emboldened version of him, or would they see it as a failure? The air crackled with uncertainty as he prepared to reveal this new layer of himself to the family who knew him only as the rich kid. Steeling himself, ready to shatter the silence that had long defined his life, Ethan took a deep breath, thinking of Mia, the artist, the dreamer, the one who inspired him to view his future differently. The moment of revelation had arrived. Yet, with it came unanswered questions, waiting just beyond the edges of his conviction. Would he emerge renewed or crushed under the weight of familial expectation? Ethan stood at the periphery of the gathering, half listening to the chatter while his mind teetered between eagerness and fear. Each laugh, every shared story of accomplishment served as a reminder of the luminous facade maintained by his family. They thrived in ambition, cloaked in achievements that felt foreign to him. He felt like a phantom, slipping through the flesh and blood connections of familial pride but remaining eternally unseen. As conversation flowed around him, he grabbed a drink, using the slight distraction to anchor himself. He had spent a lifetime crafting an identity that never felt like his own. But now, as the words of Mia reverberated in his mind, that false identity began to chafe. If he truly wanted to embrace art, how could he navigate his existing reality? Would this performative stability dissolve under the weight of his truth? Gathering fragments of courage, he approached the center of the gathering where his parents were engrossed in a conversation about Ethan's prospects in finance, a path they envisioned, a trajectory Ethan found stifling. He summoned the resolve that had begun bubbling within him like a mountain spring, waiting for the right moment to burst forth. Maybe tonight was the night. He spoke. "I've been thinking about my future," he ventured, the words trembling in his throat like leaves in the wind. The room quieted, eyes turning towards him, laden with anticipation. A swirl of emotions drew closer, thick with familial expectations and unfulfilled aspirations. "Finance, right?" His father interjected, a hopeful grin faltering at the edges. "There's certainly potential there." "Your mother and I really think it." "No," Ethan interrupted, his voice stronger than he felt. "I want to explore art again. I've realized how important it is to me." The silence that followed felt heavy, a palpable weight as though he had just declared war on expectations. His mother's eyes widened, disappointment flickering before she composed herself. "Art? But Ethan, you have such potential in business. Why throw that away?" "I'm not throwing anything away. I want to invest in myself. Art defines who I am in ways I've ignored." Declarations flowed, crisper now, as the adrenaline surged. With each phrase, the old Ethan began to crumble, revealed in shards of disappointment and repressed dreams. He dared to challenge the carefully curated narrative. His father searched Ethan's eyes, weighing the depth of his resolve. "So, you want to be an artist? Like your friend Mia?" His tone harbored skepticism, an edge that felt sharper than expected. "Yes," Ethan affirmed, his breath catching for a moment. "Mia has shown me what it means to chase passion without fear. I need to explore that vein of myself." "I am more than your plans," his mind screamed defiantly. The reactions of his parents were a mix of emotions, shock, concern, and a hint of environmental bewilderment. It was as if he stood at the edge of a cliff, questioning the fall while they were still firmly planted on the ground. Their expectations weighed against the vibrant dream he craved to pursue. "Art," his mother murmured, her thoughtful processing palpable. "Ethan, I understand that you think this is what you want, but can you make a living? Can it sustain a life of success like we know?" Determination clashed head-on with doubt, capturing him in a crossfire. Perhaps it had been easier to fit the mold they designed for him, to remain part of a legacy primed for financial success. But with every moment, the weight of inspiration from Mia stirred a relentless urge to create, to narrate his existence through art, not finance. "I'll find a way," he managed, though tremors of uncertainty lingered beneath his resolve. "If this is what I truly want, then I owe it to myself to try." The silence that ensued was deafening, a cocoon wrapping around him filled with both potential and dread. The room felt like a battleground divided between acceptance and rejection. Ethan's heart raced, vulnerable but defiant. The chance to redefine himself stretched before him, tangled with fear. Yet, the path ahead began to unspool, a sketch of possibility lingering in the air, echoing Mia's spirit of pursuit. But just as he was beginning to believe in the tides of change, his father finally broke through the tension. "If that's what you want, I can't stop you," he replied, voice quiet and heavy with reluctance. The response scared Ethan more than disapproval, a hint of tacit acknowledgement intertwined with unresolved tension. There lay the potential for support, but did it just mask discontentment? He had passed through a pivotal moment, the labyrinth of family expectation opening up before him. But deep within, shadows of doubt loomed, waiting to seize his resolve. The journey ahead would demand bravery, and the longing for acceptance weighed heavily in his chest. With each choice illuminated by hope, Ethan wondered if he had truly severed ties from expectations or if they would return to haunt him. What awaited him in the embrace of his artistic passion, primal and true? The intricacies of each argument resonated within, challenging his commitment. As he stared into the faces of his family, a confrontation loomed on the horizon, one that had the potential to redefine not only his journey but also the legacy he was born into. Would he discover strength in their acceptance, or would rejection reveal a deeper truth about himself, one he hadn't yet dared to confront? Ethan felt the oppressive weight of unyielding silence pressing down on him as he scanned the room, searching for some sign of understanding in his parents' stern expressions. The air thickened with tension, and he realized he needed to recalibrate his expectations, not just for himself but for the dynamic with his family. With a deep breath, he fortified the walls of his resolve and broke the silence that wrapped around them like a heavy fog. "I know this might seem sudden," he said, attempting to soften the rigidity of his declaration. "But I have been thinking about this for a long time. Art has always been there, a part of my world that I didn't fully allow myself to embrace." His mother, still processing, stirred. "But why now, Ethan? You've spent so much time preparing for finance, it's a secure future. Your father worked hard to create that path for you." Ethan recognized the defensive tone in her voice. It was a plea born from love, a desire to shield him from the undulating market waves and uncertain waters of artistic ambition. "I understand that. But you must know I can't spend my life walking down a road that doesn't lead me to happiness." The vulnerability of his confession dared to rise above the stinging doubts, revealing a clarity he didn't realize he possessed. He turned his gaze to his father. "I need to explore what makes me fulfilled. Can't you at least respect that?" Ethan felt the fervor bubbling, an ember ignited with the intent to blaze a trail of understanding. His father lowered his gaze, breaking their intense eye contact. Out of discomfort or introspection Ethan couldn't tell. The silence that followed felt suffocating, as if everyone else had faded into the background, their lives distant echoes of a loud conversation he longed to own. As the seconds ticked by, Ethan felt impulses swirling within him. Years of conformity began to crack under the pressure of his truth, planting a seed of encouragement within him. Yet, shadows flickered at the edges of this revelation. Doubts danced around the edges, asking whether he could truly break free from their well-intentioned bonds. Suddenly, a familiar presence broke through the gathering heaviness. It was Mia, her vibrant energy slicing through the tension like a paintbrush across a blank canvas. Her eyes sparkled, radiating the joy of an unrestrained artist. "Ethan! I saw you talking," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. "You have to tell me about it. What do your parents think?" Ethan stammered for a moment, unsure if he was ready to expose the battleground within. But something in Mia's encouraging demeanor urged him to take a leap. "I told them I want to pursue art. I'm ready to take it seriously." Mia beamed, weaving through the crowd to stand beside him, joining him in the confrontation. "That's amazing. Art offers a way to express yourself that finance can't. Have you thought about what your first steps might be?" Ethan blinked, startled by the momentum her words provided. He hadn't woven such thoughts into the fabric of his decision. "I guess I could start with taking classes, maybe look for a community studio." A wave of liberation washed over him as he spoke. "I want to create pieces that challenge notions, that speak to others." As he voiced his aspirations, the tension within him began to dissipate, replaced by a palpable excitement. Each word unlocked doors in his mind, revealing a trove of potential he hadn't realized was hidden beneath the surface. He could feel his family's gaze shift slightly, curiosity mingling with their doubt. "Classes could help you focus," Mia encouraged, "but you also need to define your narrative. What do you want to say with your art? Art is more than just technique, it's about communication." Ethan nodded fervently, each idea spiraling into intricate designs in his mind. He could see a future where his brushstrokes painted his truths. "It's not just about making things pretty. I want to tackle real themes, make people think even if it's uncomfortable." Just then, the flicker of a nearby conversation caught his ear. A couple by the bar discussed an upcoming exhibit that featured emerging artists. Ethan's heart raced. Could this seminar be his launchpad? What if, he said, letting the words spill out, what if I enter that exhibit? I could see what happens when I put my work out there, face criticism, grow. He felt the thrill of ambition ignite within him. Perhaps the walls that had confined him were starting to crumble, one conversation at a time. Yet, as the spark of excitement surged, a whisper of doubt grazed his thoughts. Would he really be ready to embrace exposure, to open himself up to judgment? Would his parents rally behind him if he entered that life-changing competition? As that tension hung in the air, he noticed a spark of hope flicker in his mother's eyes, and his father's brow furrow in contemplation. But the question remained, would they support him as he took this audacious leap into the unknown? Ethan's heart pounded in anticipation, aware that what came next might redefine not just his dreams, but the very fabric of familial support in his quest for authenticity. Ethan's mind raced as he left the gathering, Mia's buoyant presence lingering behind him like an afterimage. Driven by the force of his declaration, he found a quiet corner, seeking respite from the disarray of emotions swirling within him. The vibrant artful surroundings felt almost alive, their colors beckoning him to step closer, yet the weight of his family's expectations bore down on him like a shroud. As he leaned against the cool wall, he reflected on Mia's words. Define your narrative. He had always thought about art in terms of technique and aesthetics, but now, the idea of conveying deeper themes began to take shape in his mind. What was his story? What experiences shaped him? The vulnerability of this self-exploration struck him hard. Could he unearth his truths and unveil them to the world? A nagging doubt crept in. His father had devoted his life to establishing a legacy. What if Ethan's artistic pursuits were seen as abandoning that legacy? Guilt coiled around his heart, yet a flicker of rebellion ignited within him. He had spent too long in the shadows of other people's dreams, now it was time to step into his own light. Ethan pulled out his phone, tracing the screen with trembling fingers as he scrolled through art classes and community studios nearby. Each tap brought a tangible excitement, but the thought of putting himself out there was terrifying. It felt dangerously close to vulnerability. He had to be prepared for the judgment, yet the only way to forge his path was to accept it. He closed his eyes, envisioning what it would be like to lay his soul bare in front of strangers, the fear of rejection mixed with the thrill of raw expression. The idea was potent, almost intoxicating. Taking a deep breath, Ethan made a decision. He would enroll in classes not only to learn but also to define his voice as an artist. The late-night sketching sessions in his small apartment would no longer feel like theft from his future, instead, they would become a birthright. But choosing to dive headfirst into this journey also meant confronting his parents. What would he say? How could he make them understand that this choice was not born from rebellion, but from a desperate need to embody his true self? Ethan feared their potential disappointment, the thought alone twisted knots in his stomach. Gathering his thoughts, he pulled out his sketchbook. It had been gathering dust, a forgotten piece of his inner world. As he flipped through the pages, unfinished drawings of faces and intricate patterns revealed glimpses of his submerged creativity. With newfound commitment, he began to sketch. Lines flowed instinctively, they tore through the paper like an erupting volcano, each stroke mirroring the conflict in his heart. Here, in the sacred space of creation, doubts melded with visions of possibility. His fears transformed into clarion calls for expression, moments of pain and joy intricately woven together. But beneath the excitement of this newfound agency, an undercurrent of apprehension persisted. Sitting in the midst of a crowd might seem daunting, but to truly confront his family would be more perilous. Ethan envisioned their responses: disappointment, anger, perhaps misunderstanding. The prospect of opening up was layered with complexities he could scarcely contemplate. As he added the final touches to his sketch, he realized that his journey had only just begun. The art exhibit glimmered on the horizon, a chance to put his work to the test, to unveil his identity. Yet, deep down, he grappled with the unaddressed emotional barricade: his family. How would they react if he took that leap? Standing on the precipice of his choices, Ethan knew he had to confront this uncertainty head-on. It wasn't just about art anymore, it was about unveiling himself to those he loved and holding fast against their possible rejection. With each stroke, he pressed deeper into this revelation: his family's support or disapproval would not define his self-worth. It was time to break free and claim the identity he had long hidden. The thought settled heavily, but it also felt liberating. As he closed his sketchbook, a purposeful clarity emerged. He would embrace the uncertainty, walk the path towards greatness amidst fear. But what awaited him on the other side of this revelation? Would he find acceptance, or would he face a confrontation that could shatter the precarious balance of his family dynamics? The clash ahead loomed ominously, and Ethan felt it pulse in the air like an unresolved chord. With each heartbeat, the moment to define his journey drew nearer. Ethan's resolve crystallized as he prepared to confront the pivotal choice he had delayed for so long. That morning, he awoke with a gnawing awareness that clarity was a double-edged sword. He was energized by the prospect of defining his artistic identity, yet weighed down by the looming confrontation with his family. How would they reconcile their dream for him with his burgeoning passion for art? Every shade of uncertainty danced in tandem with his excitement as he stepped into his modest kitchen. The lingering scent of fresh coffee hung in the air, yet it did little to warm the chill that settled in his bones. He stirred the brew absent-mindedly, navigating his thoughts as he wrestled with the daunting process of preparing for the conversation ahead. The sketchbook lay open on the table, inviting yet intimidating. It called to him, visually showcasing what he dared to dream. If only he could pour out his heart to his family, if only they might understand the vibrancy he glimpsed within the confines of his own imagination. Could he translate the depth of his self-discovery into words they might comprehend? As he took a sip of the bitter brew, he noticed the shadows lengthening across the room. Time pressed on him like a silent countdown, each tick amplifying his anxiety. He was acutely aware of the fragility of human connections and the obstacles that lay in the wake of unveiling his truth. Inspiration struck. He decided to prepare a small presentation, a means to visually communicate his passion. He gathered his best sketches, the ones that resonated with his sense of identity, whispers of his childhood infused with bursts of color, emotion, and texture. This would become his visual manifesto, a way to articulate what words alone might fail to convey. Over the next few days, he meticulously curated the pieces, capturing the essence of who he was becoming. The process was cathartic, every stroke felt like a release, unearthing layers of himself that had lain dormant for far too long. With each drawing, Ethan felt defiance growing within him. He was an artist, and he had every right to express that identity without reservation. But along with the emboldening spirit came trepidation. What if they rejected his choices? Would they view his art as a divergence from legacy or as a personal evolution? He played out scenarios in his mind, his father's stern disappointment, his mother's startled silence filling the room. Was that a risk he was willing to take? Finally, the day came when he gathered the courage to broach the subject with his family. Dread seeped into his thoughts as he approached the dining room table, where they typically gathered. As he placed his sketches down and cleared his throat, his heart hammered in his chest. The family, intrigued yet cautious, leaned in with furrowed brows, unknowingly rapacious for what he was about to unveil. Yet, as he laid out his creative journey, he felt an unexpected shift in the air. The act of baring his soul ignited something in him, transforming the growing tension into a dynamic wave of authenticity. The risk of vulnerability began to feel exhilarating. As they flipped through the pages, he observed their expressions: puzzled curiosity mingled with genuine interest. His mother's eyes glistened with unspoken words, while his father remained stoically engaged, processing the moment. Then, something shifted irreversibly. The semblance of acceptance began to flicker. A chase of possibility ignited within him, making him daringly optimistic. Just as he began speaking with passion about his work, the doorbell interrupted his unfolding narrative. He took a deep breath, fearing disruption. Could the strength of his resolve endure? Peering at the door, Ethan felt an unsought wave of anxiety wash over him. Who could it be? Did it hold further implications for his bold declaration? With his family's support hanging in the balance, he hesitated, adrenaline surging through him. Ethan had bitten off more than he could chew. What lay behind that door might pivot the tenuous thread of connection he had just begun to forge. Would it mark a change, or would it serve to further complicate an already charged moment? There was no way to tell. As he moved toward the entrance, uncertainty tangled with hope, leaving him questioning the next chapter of his journey. Ethan hesitated, the door looming large in his mind. His heart raced, entwined with the stakes of his revelation. He knew that whatever lay behind that door could alter the entire atmosphere. He had carefully constructed a precarious balancing act of emotions and intentions. The sketches, vibrant and alive on the table, felt suddenly heavy, their power diluted by the unanticipated tension. His hand grazed the doorknob, and with a quick inhale, he opened it. Standing before him was an unfamiliar face, a delivery person with a box, large and oddly shaped. Ethan blinked, momentarily dumbfounded. It felt trivial against the backdrop of his family dynamics, yet something in the abruptness of the moment stirred the need for clarity. The delivery person handed him the package, offering a brief nod before moving on. Ethan closed the door, the package seeming oddly out of place amid the warmth of his familial unfolding. He placed it aside, unwilling to lose the momentum he had gained, and turned back toward the table. His family remained poised, watches and whispers contained in the air, a tangible sense of anticipation. A flicker of familiarity laid within their glances, an unspoken question intertwining with the complexity of his anxious resolve. Would they still be inclined to accept his choices, to navigate the ambiguity he had laid before them? With a newfound urgency, Ethan resumed his exploration of artistic expression. "I wanted you to see not just what I create, but why I create it." He pointed to a vibrant landscape sketch that encapsulated his childhood home, decorated with whimsical colors, leaping sunlight, a stark contrast to the gray expectations that loomed over him. "This is where I found my passion." Their shifts in position betrayed their attentiveness. His mother leaned in, eyes aflame with understanding, his father's brow furrowed as he processed these revelations. Ethan felt a rush of adrenaline. This was not just an unveiling of art, it was the unraveling of a deeper facet of himself that had been long cloaked in silence. Each stroke carried stories untold. As he gestured passionately, diving into the emotional depths behind each piece, the environment shifted. The air thickened with resonance, and for the first time, his deepest fears began to dissolve. Perhaps they would not only see the artist before them but also come to realize the man he was becoming. Yet, edging through his bravado was a realization: the fear that had once crippled him began to morph into a latent power. He was no longer trapped by their expectations, he was wielding a choice of his own. But as he reached for the last piece, a portrait of himself mid-creation, something inside him lingered. A mix of hope and trepidation grasped at his insides. This was his final shot at bridging the gap between his dreams and their perceptions. This moment could either catapult him forward into acceptance or cast doubt back into the fray. Just as he lifted the portrait, the packaged box caught his eye. It felt like a forgotten omen, a distraction tumbling his focus. With a quick glance back at his family, their rapt attention now a tormented reminder of something he had almost lost: his true self. But standing there, experiencing the vulnerability of this moment, he knew he had to confront that box too. "What's in there?" his mother asked, her voice breaking the spell as curiosity spread across the table. Ethan's heart skipped, the intertwining paths of his artistic journey and this unexpected package now pressing against each other. What had he truly signed up for? His response required the fullness of both honesty and bravery. Would tearing open that box reveal a pathway to a new understanding, or would it further complicate the fragile connection he sought to build? With a deep breath, he realized he could no longer avoid both the box and what it represented. He turned to face the unexpected, ready to unearth whatever awaited him inside or to confront the chaos it might unleash on the revelation of his identity. Ethan paused, the tension thickening in the air as his gaze shifted from his family's expectant faces to the package resting on the table. It felt as if the world around him had been reduced to a single point of focus, the box now a threshold he had to cross. He ignored the thrumming pulse of uncertainty escalating within him and took a step forward, willing to confront the unknown. As he knelt beside the box, his fingers wandered over its surface, tracing the contours as if to decipher the secrets it held. Each tap and scratch served to heighten his anticipation. It felt less like a delivery and more like an unspoken promise demanding to be fulfilled. He hesitated, a solitary voice echoing in the void of his mind. What if the contents of this box were a distraction from his path of discovery? But he quickly squashed the doubt. This moment could redefine everything. With a decisiveness that startled even him, Ethan ripped through the tape, the sound slicing through the fragile silence enveloping his family. The flaps fell open, revealing a series of art supplies, brushes, vibrant paints, and sketchbooks. The sight sparked a visceral reaction, memories flooding back in waves of nostalgia. This was a collection not merely of materials, it was a connection to his journey, a tangible representation of the child artist he had buried beneath the weight of expectations. His family leaned in, breaths held almost in reverence, echoing Ethan's internal tension. "I didn't order these," he stammered, feeling a rush of vulnerability. The first thought was concern, but then he understood this gift was a message, a call to reclaim the artist he had hidden for so long. "Someone believes in your talent," his father said, breaking the silence, uncertainty laced in his voice as he struggled to comprehend the surprise. "But does that mean you believe in it, too?" The question struck Ethan with the force of revelation. His heart raced again, not from fear, but from a budding urgency. Would he dare to accept this as an encouragement to push further into his artistic identity? Did he have the courage to embrace the voice he had kept silent? His finger hovered over the paints, the possibilities swirling in a dizzying array. Ethan's perceptions of his family shifted in that moment. The weight of their expectations began to transform into a supportive framework. It sparked an internal transformation. He sensed that revealing his passion might be more than just acceptance, it could be the catalyst for change within their own perceptions of him. As he picked up a brush, the familiar weight revitalized his sense of self. "Can I show you some more?" he asked, voice trembling with newfound determination. He spun around, the anticipation tangible in the air, yearning for affirmation in the uncharted territory he was navigating. The portraits he had painted came alive in his mind, clamoring to be shared. "Please," his mother breathed, eyes glistening in the soft light that cast shadows through the art supplies. Ethan quickly turned to the nearby table, eager to explore the resonance of connection as he presented his pieces, weaving the narrative of his struggles, triumphs, and the inherent beauty of his journey. The energy in the room shifted again, transforming the atmosphere from one of tension to deepening understanding. He became aware not just of their curiosity, but of the growing bond. Each piece he showcased peeled back layers of self-doubt, illuminating the emotions that tethered him to his art. As his voice rose with confidence, he became increasingly aware of the flickering thoughts in his mind. The fear that had once taken root was slowly being rooted out, replaced with growth potential. And then, just as he neared the climax of a particularly revealing piece, a realization struck him with the force of a tidal wave. The box had not merely served as a prompt for their connection but had awakened something dormant within him. Being authentic required continual courageous choices. But this was merely the beginning. The treasures uncovered in that box weren't only materials, they had ignited a fire that sought further expression. With intense focus, he formulated a plan to launch into the unknown and embrace the unfolding potential of his artistry. This was no longer a solitary journey. This awakening led him to another question that stirred deep within: could he take the next step beyond the canvas? Ethan knew that sharing his art would require reaching further into vulnerability, to confront not just the canvas, but the critical voices that threatened to shadow his authenticity. In that instant, he became acutely aware that truth lay in the heart of action. Outside the comforts he had built, a world awaited, demanding to be engaged with. But first, could he truly reveal the depths of his voice to those he sought acceptance from? With a steadying breath, he unfolded the next stage of his vision. The time had come. That box was only the beginning. Where would this newfound courage take him next? Ethan sat in his dimly lit studio, surrounded by the cacophony of color and texture. He was lost in the world of his canvases, each stroke on the page echoing the newfound clarity that lingered in the air since the box's arrival. The art supplies, once strangers to his fingertips, now felt like extensions of himself. They beckoned to him, urging him to explore undiscovered depths of his creativity. Yet, the initial thrill was quickly chased by a nagging uncertainty. What would happen when he stepped outside this sanctuary of self-proclamation? The room was silent, save for the soft rustle of pages and the scratch of brushes. He had put aside the gear for mere practice this time. It was about revealing a deeper narrative. Vibrant colors splashed onto the canvas, each hue a reflection of his thoughts and fears. Each choice was deliberate, yet exhilarating, as layers built upon one another. There was a magic in the chaos, almost addictive, as the dynamic of brush against canvas unleashed a torrent of emotion. But beneath the surface, the question loomed: was he truly ready to share his creations with the world? Would those critical voices that had once silenced him return, or had the courage he had discovered truly shifted the paradigm of his artistic journey? He looked down at his latest work. It was more than an image, it was a declaration. A representation of the struggles he had faced and the internal battles he had fought. Yet even as he admired it, a shadow crept into his thoughts. What if his family's support was transient? What if, when he stepped into the public eye, their voices of encouragement faded, replaced by the cacophony of doubt? Ethan pushed the troubling thoughts aside, gripping his brush tighter. He envisioned art shows, perhaps local galleries, a chance to showcase his journey to a wider audience. Each flick of his wrist illuminated a flicker of aspiration that surged within him. But ready or not, showing his work would force a reckoning. Bold as it seemed, every piece laid bare his vulnerabilities, and sharing those intimate truths with others made him tremble. He pondered the idea of collaboration, even mentorship. There was so much to learn from others in the field, perhaps artists who had traversed similar paths. It suddenly felt vital to seek voices of both criticism and inspiration. But the thought of approaching experienced artists intimidated him. Their validation could easily turn to critique, a scrutiny that could cut deeper than he was prepared for. A noise interrupted his spiraling thoughts. A faint knock broke the stillness. It was his father, peeking through the door, hesitance on his face. "Ethan, can I come in?" "Of course," Ethan replied, fisting paint-covered hands in his lap. As his father entered, he tried to mask the swirl of anxiety tightening within him. "What's on your mind?" his father asked, leaning against the doorframe, observing with a blend of concern and curiosity. "I've been thinking about showing my art," Ethan confessed, the words tumbling from his lips before he could rein them in. "I'm not sure I'm ready, though." His father smiled, warmth and pride radiating from him. "You've come so far, son. Recognizing your art as important is half the journey. The other half is sharing it. You're the only one holding yourself back." Ethan chewed on his lower lip, absorbing his father's encouragement. But what followed was an internal war, a duel between desire and trepidation. Painful doubt lingered, clear as day. It was a double-edged sword poised to either slice through the fears or plunge him deeper into darkness. With a determined nod, he began to form a plan. Maybe he would start small, an informal gathering, a session to unveil his work to friends. Bringing others into his creative ecosystem could serve as a test run for future endeavors. It was a way to gauge not just their reactions, but his own capacity for acceptance and vulnerability. The deeper realization struck him: this artistic journey was about making connections, not just with colors but with the people who would witness it. He would gradually engage in conversations that mattered not just with critics but also allies who might carry his dreams forward. As he picked up the brush once more, the weight of promise settled on him. The colors leapt to life as he painted, the past unwinding in vibrant strokes. This was no longer just an expedition of self-discovery but a pursuit that transcended individual fear. Each layer would be a step toward untangling the lines of connection that awaited him. Ethan paused, catching his breath and contemplating the light that spilled across his canvas. Perhaps tomorrow would bring the courage he sought. The apprehension might remain, but so too would the dream of a public unveiling that could transform everything. He hesitated before dipping his brush once again, knowing the future glimmered beyond the canvas. But what awaited him outside the safety of his studio remained uncertain. Would he seize the catalysts of change ahead, or would he retreat back into himself, suffocated by fear? The moment approached, raw and unpolished a reckoning loomed. Daring to confront what lay outside his artful sanctum, Ethan forged on, the path to authenticity stretching ahead of him, demanding to be explored. Ethan stood in front of the large, sunlit window of his studio, allowing the warmth to soak into his skin. The vibrant colors glimmered in his artworks, each brushstroke encapsulating fragments of his journey raw, unguarded, and powerful. This was not just another day, it was a transformative pivotal moment in his life. He had wrestled with fear and expectation, yet finally understood that the essence of his self-expression and satisfaction lay within embracing the uncomfortable. He had invited a handful of friends for an informal showing of his artworks, a gesture that seemed monumental. As he scanned the room, he could feel the energy buzzing in the air. The canvases floated in the dim light, shimmering with vitality that contrasted starkly with the shadow of self-doubt he had carried for years. Today, he would not hide. Today, he would reveal who he was meant to become. His friends arrived, settling in as laughter and chatter filled the space. Ethan felt a surge of exhilaration mingle with anxiety. They wandered, engaging with each piece, inquiring about the stories behind the brushes and colors, the emotional truths embedded in every stroke. Their curiosity stoked the embers of confidence smoldering within him. Bit by bit, he noticed a metamorphosis occurring, both in himself and within the collective excitement igniting the room. "This one is incredible, Ethan. Did this come from your childhood?" His friend Sarah asked, gesturing toward a canvas bursting with vivid colors, a swirl of landscapes interwoven with childhood memories. Ethan smiled instinctively, the inquiry releasing some of the self-imposed pressure. "Yes, it reflects what I used to see outside my window as a child. It feels like home." He spoke with authenticity, each word more fluid than the last. This engagement offered him recognizable connection not just with art, but with those who appreciated it. As more questions rolled in, his hesitations blurred into the background, crowded out by the light of their support. "Art is a medium to influence," he shared, capturing the attention of all, to communicate, to engage. "It's tough to expose yourself, but every piece is part of me, every choice showcases my evolution." The words wove through the exchanges, forging a tapestry from shared interests and vulnerabilities. No longer was he just Ethan, the son of wealth and expectations, but Ethan the artist, burgeoning and intensely aware of who he wanted to be. As he continued, their applause transformed into appreciation, their expressions validating the journey he had traversed. Each nod of recognition made the anxieties he had previously endured feel small, inconsequential against the backdrop of their honest feedback. Ethan gazed at one of his canvases. It was a self-portrait begun months prior, but never finished, a representation of who he believed he was meant to be, a figure half shrouded in darkness, splattered with drips of color that indicated potential. And this, he hesitated, contemplating the depths he had yet to unveil. "This is who I used to feel I was. But now, I want to paint the whole picture." In that moment, a quiet resolve blossomed within him. Not only did he desire to explore the depths of his artistry, but he aspired to contribute with purpose, embracing the challenges and setbacks, letting them paint the narrative he would create. The support from his friends felt palpable, a safety net cradling his endeavors as they reached out for their own artistic journeys. Before leaving, they gathered around him, overwhelmed with excitement as they made plans to return for future exhibitions. Their trust in him began to reshape Ethan's own perception of success. He hadn't merely exhibited his art, he had shared a piece of himself, and that bond bore the promise of continuing connection. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan stood in his studio reflecting on the shift he had experienced. The shadows that once represented insecurities and familial expectations no longer seemed pervasive. Instead, they were transformed into stepping stones leading to authenticity. Ethan felt a surge of purpose as he ventured into the world outside his art. He recognized he was no longer bound by others' expectations. His narrative was uniquely his own, composed of raw emotion and the daring pursuit of exploration. He understood now that creating art meant exposing vulnerability and seizing that intimate satisfaction, not based on comparison but in self-acceptance. He had not just broken the cycle of his own feelings of inadequacy, he had forged important connections, igniting lost friendships and sparking collaborative projects inspired by aspirational dreams. His path was clearer. Art would weave through the fabric of his existence, a vehicle through which he could engage the world. Ethan smiled to himself, feeling solid confidence swell within him. The moment had come. He was now defined by his own narrative, no longer just the son of expectations but an artist who had claimed his identity. There was a new promise in the air, one that whispered of a journey yet to unfold, a journey filled with self-expression, connection, and unwavering fulfillment. And as he turned off the lights in his studio, feeling the weight of transformation settle within, he understood this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. If you felt inspired by Ethan's journey and the power of self-discovery, you need to subscribe now for more exclusive emotional stories that shake your soul. This is the moment to show your support for art, vulnerability, and evolution. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these stories alive. Share your reactions and theories about Ethan's journey in the comments below. Your voice matters here. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this transformative tale.